Science fiction has played a significant role in the zeitgeist of film and film culture for decades. Throughout nearly every period of film history, sci-fi has been at the forefront of innovation in both visuals and storytelling. As classic film noir and classic sci-fi evolved, their classifications hit a crossroad in the 1980s and have intertwined in several films since. The conventions of classic film noir and neo-noir have intersected for so many years now that many of these conventions have become expected from a high-quality sci-fi film, which poses the question: have the styles, characteristics, and conventions of classic film noir been remediated to not only influence the genre of science fiction, but to become the primary styles, characteristics, and conventions of the genre itself?
Whoa.
Bolter and Grusin think of remediation as any representation of one medium into another. This could work on several levels in film, through adaptations, direct influences, or even very minute aspects. In Notes on Film Noir, Paul Schrader doesn't see film noir as a genre, but rather qualities of films that signify a tone and mood. These qualifications include scenes lit for night, oblique and vertical lines, actors and setting given equal lighting, an attachment to water, and a complex chronological order. Other essential qualities are the focus on urban architecture and space, and an edgy, tough, cynical, hard-boiled hero. These are the qualities that we'll look for when seeing the relation between film noir and the sci-fi genre. We start in 1965, where we see the first intersection of sci-fi and film noir in the French film Alphaville. This dystopian science fiction plot used noir stylistics to create and enhance the protagonist and become a very early precursor for what was to come. Fast forward 17 years to June of 1982 with Ridley Scott's cult classic Blade Runner. Blade Runner is filled with obvious noir elements inside 2019 Los Angeles. Ridley Scott's obvious inspiration from noir is on full display here, prefaced by smaller examples in Scott's prior 1979 isolation horror thriller Alien. The architecture, low lighting, use of shadows, and attachment to water, paired with Harrison Ford's hard-boiled hero Rick Deckard, results in a sci-fi neo-noir masterpiece that slowly evolved into one of the most prominent influences of modern sci-fi filmmaking and spawning the term tech noir. After Blade Runner, the 1980s saw two prominent action franchises remediate the film noir sci-fi relationship in two sci-fi cyberpunk action films, 1984's Terminator and 1987's RoboCop. Both of these properties are not as obvious examples as Blade Runner due to their lack of a hard-boiled hero, among other things, but remediated the style in different aspects. James Cameron's Terminator used the qualities of film noir sparingly, also utilizing the morbid futurism that we saw in Blade Runner. The film goes as far even to take the story to a bar appropriately named Tech Noir. In 1987, RoboCop continued this focus on morbid futurism and a dark noir atmosphere paired with science fiction action. The late 1990s then clearly showed the range of film noir remediation with two vastly different films: 1998's science fiction ode to film noir Dark City, and the 1999 groundbreaking sci-fi film The Matrix. In 1998's Dark City, director Alex Proyas uses the powerful visual language of film noir to depict the world of Dark City. The film is set in a city that is under a permanent nightfall, and, like Blade Runner, uses a futuristic dystopia to further the narrative. 1999 saw the birth of a new age of sci-fi with the Wachowski siblings' inventive film, The Matrix. We've seen this directing team dip their toes into film noir with 1996's Bound, but filmgoers had not seen something quite like The Matrix since Blade Runner. Once again, the film uses noir-like urban space and architecture to its advantage, and the protagonist, Neo, can be seen as a new take on the hard-boiled hero. The Matrix is a fantastic example of the remediation of film noir branching out, as the Wachowski siblings have cited their inspiration from sci-fi films rather than classic film noirs. They also cite Blade Runner as a major influence, saying, quote, "Blade Runner was a benchmark sci-fi film, a masterpiece. Of course there's influence." It's clear that The Matrix is an example of the chain of remediation that has turned film noir influences on sci-fi into sci-fi staples. As we enter the 2000s, it almost becomes a surprise to not see at least one major film noir element in a sci-fi film. 2002's Minority Report, directed by Steven Spielberg, displayed how much noir had infested the genre. Minority Report takes aspects of film noir inspired by sci-fi tropes, as well as direct film noir influences to create a dystopian sci-fi neo-noir film, further showing the length of remediation. The 2010s continued this idea, beginning with Christopher Nolan's 2010 Best Picture nominee, Inception. This sci-fi epic takes the film noir characteristics that have all but completely consumed the genre and, like Spielberg, combines them with the sci-fi tropes we know. Nolan's use of the femme fatale in the character Mal is the most obvious, but the film also employs the architecture and oblique angles to set a noir tone inside the already noir-like sci-fi world. As we move on to our modern films landscape, we see more than ever the product of remediation of film noir through science fiction. A film like Ex Machina, released in 2015, which on the surface doesn't seem like much of a noir at all, reimagines the femme fatale through the AI creation Ava. James Narrowmore talks about the noir mediascape, and he says, "We might even say that noir itself is a kind of mediascape, a loosely related collection of perversely mysterious motifs or scenarios that circulate through all the information technologies." Ex Machina, among other previously mentioned films, epitomizes these loosely related scenarios. These constant aspects of film noir have created a mediascape that reaches as far as a film like Ex Machina, further showing the characteristics almost completely adopting themselves as the characteristics of a sci-fi film. Film noir continues to ooze into sci-fi subgenres, with comic book properties like 2005's Sin City, Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, and Netflix's Daredevil TV show relying heavily on noir styles to create an effective narrative tone. 2017 sees this remediation continue with films such as the live-action Ghost in the Shell adaptation, a neo-noir Blade Runner sequel titled Blade Runner 2049, and the hard-boiled superhero film Logan's Blu-ray release, literally containing a black-and-white version of the film, appropriately titled Logan Noir. It's clear the countless levels of remediation as defined by Bolter and Grusin has happened between classic film noir and science fiction films, so much so that these characteristics have become primarily associated with the genre to a large portion of the movie-going community. I think, after looking at these films, it's safe to say that without the remediation of classic film noir, science fiction on the big screen as we know it would be vastly different.